Welcome in. This is your odds checker betting preview for this week's WGC-Dell Technologies Match Play. I'm Rick Gehman, that right there. Geoff Fienberg. Jeff, how about this little match play action, my friend?
I absolutely love match play, Rick. It is a peak week, in my opinion, on the betting calendar. The PGA Tour stroke play, it's never ending 50 plus weeks. The monotony can get to you, and any change of pace I'm here for. And there's not a more elite change of pace than match play World Golf Championship style.
That's right. You get some of the best golfers in the world, and they're split into 16 groups of 4. Those 4 golfers will each play each other Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then the golfer with the best record will move out of the group and into the single elimination phase. And Jeff, before we dive into the big board and all the odds and all that fun stuff, the type of golfer that wins these events, how would you describe them? Because we'll have a couple of Cinderellas that get to the Sweet 16, that get to the Elite 8, but you're usually like, like Billy Horschel was like the worst guy that's won it recently, hasn't it been?
Yeah, that's very well said, Rick. I mean, long term, it's pretty much been a cavalcade of guys who have big time international Ryder Cup, President's Cup match play experience, at least in my tenure of being a guy that loves to bet golf, going back to like Keimer, Poulter, Kuchar, and we had our elites like number 1 in the world's take this down, like Rory and Day and Dustin. And like you said, there's always been guys that sneak up and contend. But more recently, Rick, there've been, at least at this course in Austin, we've had a couple very, frisky American golfers. Your Billy Horschels, your Kevin Kisners. But let me include Bubba into that other list of guys with preeminent world match play experience. Kisner and Horschel have kind of bucked the trends, but we've always kind of acknowledged that maybe they have more European styles, but they're very well suited for these types of events. So I don't know. I don't ignore that significant world match play experience. I really don't. I think long-term history tells us it's actually quite very important.
Yeah, here is the odds checker grid. We've got Jon Rahm and Justin Thomas at 14-1. They are co-favorites with Viktor Hovland right behind at 18-1. Then you start to step into the 20s with Collin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Cantley. Jeff, before I even ask you about who to go with, do we need to discuss where to go from? We're in a bracket right now. So are you worried about spreading out your wagers in a way that these guys don't run into each other early? Or are you just going to bet the best guys that you like at the right numbers?
Like to think best guys that I like at the right numbers. I don't want to be super saturated in an area, but I wouldn't hate, like, I wouldn't not if there's a guy I like that's, under 40-1 and somehow he's going to run into a hopeful long shot I have in the Sweet 16 or something. That wouldn't necessarily stop me. But, I'm looking at the board. I like to get cocky though, Rick. You're going to see my outright card in the end. It's going to have a body from each region. I try to call this thing like a crazy person.
That's what they should offer. Like if you can get the final 4 right, you should just get like $1,000,000 on whatever that is for trying to go like the exacta style here.
I mean, it's certainly basketball's gotten a lot more upsets in recent years, but golf's always been fun for the seeds mean exponentially less. Don't sort of let your eyes get too gravitated to them in single round golf. And I've been burned by the playoff too many times in this format that ignores head to head, which I respect because they want to sort of extend it for everyone as far as they can, at least to Friday, Rick. But yeah, head to head is not considered in the playoff. And I've been burned here before, but I absolutely love the week and it starts early and I'm super excited.
Let's call it Patrick Cantley. Let's draw the line right there. 22-1 and shorter. It's Cantley, DJ, Scheffler, and then the guys I mentioned, Rahm, Thomas, Hovland, Morikawa. These are the headliners. They all kind of own their own group, so we don't have to worry about anybody running into anyone just yet with these guys, Jeff. Is there a bet to be made at the top?
As someone that bet John Rahm at the Players, and then you see essentially the same number, 14-1 at yeah, upsets are prevalent, but could argue this sort of format could work better for a player looking to get off the mat who's been to the finals here. He ran into a buzzsaw and Scotty Scheffler, I want to say in the Elite Eight last year here, Rick. So under 20-1, I would still be beholden to Rahm with a slight lean to Dustin. But under 20-1, I'm still thinking about betting John Rahm again, to be honest.
Yeah, it is interesting. Maybe the switch from the stroke play is kind of the change of pace that he needs a little bit. If you hit a couple of bad shots on one hole, they're not going to kill you. Just move on to the next one, and you can kind of tap into that raw birdie making ability. I circled Patrick Cantley out of this group. He's just kind of a nightmare in match play because he's very good. He's very deliberate. He's not going to get rattled. He's actually been quite unlucky in this format. Geoff, you've mentioned it. It's like you could go 2-1 every single year, play great, and lose on the second hole of sudden death and not even get out of your own group.
Yeah, so I really do like Cantley as well. He is a guy that I am certainly thinking of betting. And if I don't bet John Rahm, because that's going to change really how I could attack this thing, Cantley is a guy who I think can run free in his group, and it does set up well. And I would argue pound for pound value, the most fair number is probably the Cantley number, because I'm someone that can totally ignore his struggles at the Players. Even though he made the cut, it got really ugly for him in many regards, Rick. But you just look at how well he played in his last so many 8-10 starts before the Players. Players is a place that's really gotten the worst of him the last couple of years. So I'm willing to just even ignore that didn't even exist. So that could make me like that Cantley offering even more, to be honest.
Yeah, can't lay out a group for the bottom left-hand version of the bracket. Okay, let's move on here. Xander Schauffele leads off the golfers at 25-1 and longer, with Daniel Berger right behind. Brooks Koepka is 33-1, as long as with Terrell Hatton at the same number. And then you get into the Billy Horschel's, Jordan Spieth, Louis Oosthuizen. This is kind of a little bit of a sweet spot. Not all these guys anchor their group, Geoff, but they certainly have probably the upside to win this thing.
No doubt at all. I really do like Berger in a sense, Rick. Yeah, almost winning the Honda, playing a very strong players, getting the bad draw. His group is just so hard. And then one of the next round matchups that I'm excited for would be that I could have penciled in is a Berger Cantley one. So that's definitely been on my mind. But the first bet I made today, Rick, was able to get a 28-1. I did bet Xander Schauffele. I'm going to piggyback off of the silly things I said about Rahm, that just his current predicament of not winning. I actually think this format sets up absolutely perfectly for a player like Xander this week. 28-1. I'm not really afraid of Finau. Therefore, I'm not afraid of the rest of his pod at the moment. So Xander is a guy that I'm willing to back at all ends. I'm on that Xander ending whatever talk there is right now, 2 weeks ahead of the Masters. Go get it, Xander.
Trust me, if he wins the match play, it will not end the conversations about him not winning regular PGA Tour.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Because it would be different, just like the Olympics. It would just have its own, yeah, he won. It's a nice event. It's prestigious.
Yeah, this, that.
But
Group 7 for Xander Schauffele. It's him, Tony Finau, Lucas Herbert, and Takumi Kanaya.
I also need to make mention of Brooks Koepka here, Rick. Yeah, I don't think he's played this event healthy in years.
I agree with
years, because I don't think he's been healthy for the Masters in a couple years. Therefore, there's no way he's either even played this or he's been healthy for it. And speaking of how I think it sets up for Xander, it's kind of perfect for Brooks. And I don't want to make too much of the Ryder Cup, but even his last win in Phoenix, I took something from the fact that at some point in that round, he was playing with a guy in James Hahn who had the lead in the event. And Brooks always just being able to stare at the guy he just needs to beat for 18 holes. Like, it's almost the perfect Brooks Koepka dynamic with how bitter he probably is of his world ranking. You'd almost argue if you wanted to bet Brooks, you almost wish he fell into the B tier player because he'd even be more insulted in some respects. But yeah, he's a wild card because we always is, but we've never seen him healthy for this event. So I'm intrigued. I am.
Yeah, I bet Brooks. That was the name that I liked. He is you're right. So he's played it 3 times. 2019 was the last time he played it, but he's gotten out of his group stage twice. I like the idea where his nemesis is right in front of him. You said that perfectly. Just look him in the eyes and go beat him. Getting a little further, you still have some big names here, Geoff. You can get Lou Oosthuizen and Paul Casey at 35-1. You can get Bryson back in action at 40, the same price as Matt Fitzpatrick and Shane Lowry. And now we're starting to get into those B and C tier golfers, Geoff. Are there some wagers to be made here?
So this isn't really a range that I have hit at all at the moment, nor do I expect to, because I could see myself either going to the top or getting comfortable with a player like Cantley or even Brooks Koepka, as I mentioned. Man, wouldn't a Brooks versus Rahm match be a great Saturday, Rick?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of oh my God. Like, that's a write-off sort of whatever you have going on Saturday kind of thing. Not to guys like me and you would write off watching Blandy play Fleetwood, but you know what I'm saying. Nonetheless. So I'm kind of skipping this one. Going a little farther back has my attention. Will Zalatoris at 50-1. You could argue the course isn't hard enough for Zalatoris, that in some ways it mitigates his absolute strengths and polarizes his weaknesses. Match play, putting, saving par, throwing a dagger in there. That is a concern, but he's just such a good player that at 50-1, it kind of starts to feel right again for me. And if I'm not afraid of Jordan Spieth, Adam Scott at 55-1 is a player that I don't mind one bit. And I'll follow it up with, if his group wasn't so hard, I probably would have already bet Tommy Fleetwood, but that's one I'm still sort of letting percolate a little.
Yeah, that the group of death over there with Tommy. But you mentioned Adam Scott, you mentioned Will Zalatoris. They're both in that bottom right-hand quadrant. I like that. I think that's a pretty acceptable path to getting to like the final 4 here. You're going to run into JT eventually, and Victor Hovland's lurking as well. But I like the path for some of those guys, like an Adam Scott, like a Will Zalatoris. Okay, Geoff, is that as deep as we're willing to go? Because now I'm starting to get into, wow, Tony Finau 66-1 to win this golf tournament. He's in Xander's group, which I guess is probably not going to be a button you can push.
It's not a button I could push, but it's tempting. If I wasn't so bullish on Xander, it could be something I could pay attention to. He's a type of player. It's the format where maybe you could ignore some of the weaknesses because you're still confident that birdie opportunities come in abundance. And it's such a weird event in that guys will play great and lose, and guys will play horrible and win, and guys will play just fine and win, because it's just how, you match up to your opponent in some respects. I don't go too deep, Rick. You mentioned Billy Horschel being the proverbial worst player to win this, even Kevin Kisner. We're on a bit of I think we just go back to, super high-end players winning World Golf Championships. So many people are being... You look at last year's results from the pods, and it was really scary for the ones and the higher players. I don't know. I don't give up on them as quick as some others do, to be perfectly honest. I guess we'll say that.
Yeah, Jon Rahm, the only top seed to get out of his group last year, which is a little bit scary. But yeah, I'll keep a tight card at the top, and I will try to avoid them running into each other, and I'll be very happy with that.
I want to get your opinion on, I guess, Abe Answer, who finds himself in the Pete Dye group, all players who excel at Pete Dye courses. That one was led by Bubba Watson. Sorry, who else was in that one?
Yeah, that's Webb Simpson, Brian Harmon, and Bubba Watson, which Harmon and Watson alone have smashed at this event. If Simpson's back and healthy, that's a little bit. I hate the path for Answer. I like him as a player. I think it's an interesting spot for him, but I just hate the path for him.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I'm still not over how his exit from last year's tournament, to be honest. I sort of it all unraveled in my mind again today, and I got angry about it. 2-0 in his pod, up 3 on the back 9 versus Hovland, ends up losing that match, and then losing in a playoff to Streelman where he missed like a 4-footer. And I guess Hovland coming back from down 3 on the back 9 a year ago felt really annoying, but today that would just feel like normal Victor Hovland, I guess, because he's that amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Stuff happens quick at the match play, and things are going to get weird, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Geoff Fienberg is available on Twitter at GFienberg17. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been your odds checker betting preview for this week's WGC-Dell Technologies Match Play. Good luck.